Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 19th, 2024 Sebring City Council meeting. If you will all stand with me, the mayor is going to lead us in a prayer and a pledge.
All right, please bow with me. Lord, thanks once again for the city that we live in, for the staff that we have, for everything that is. With Thanksgiving coming up, I've got a little Thanksgiving prayer. Lord, we thank you for the goodness of our people and for the spirit of justice that fills this nation. We thank you for the beauty and fullness of the land and the challenges of the cities. We thank you for our work and our rest, and for one another and for our homes. We thank you, Lord. Accept our thanksgiving on that day, and we pray and give thanks through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Want to call the roll, please?
Mayor Shute.
Here.
Carlisle. Avery.
Here.
Linda.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Bishop.
Here. All right. If anyone from the audience has something they would like to discuss that is not on the agenda, you can fill out one of the forms on the front table here, turn it in to Clerk Haley, and we'll get to it a little bit later in the meeting. Mayor's report.
Not much that I did in the last couple of weeks that I can remember actually, but I did get to go to a 103rd birthday party at the Manor, so for Helen Bowden. And still kicking at 103, so that's pretty good. So Chris, she's about as old as you are, isn't she? Okay.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. Coming up this weekend is the Gobble Wobble downtown, 1 to 9 on Saturday. Don's leading the charge on that, so thank you, Don, and Tennille. We have on the 24th a Thanksgiving celebration that's done by the local pastoral group, is at the First Presbyterian Church this year. It's at 4 p.m. on that Sunday. And then on the 30th, they have Santa's coming to the circle. So we'll be lighting up the lights and getting ready to go for the next holiday season after that. And also Thanksgiving coming up on next Thursday, a week from
Can't believe it.
Thursday. So it's already here. So everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and that's all I have.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So glad you're here. Can't believe it's Thanksgiving already. We're very grateful. Also, we had a good election that went very smoothly, and we thank the Lord for a republic here where we can have a transition of power, and we appreciate that. That was an interesting night, and went to the Choices banquet, which was at First, Avon Park First Baptist. And that is for ladies that have an unexpected pregnancy to have an alternative to abortion. They get free care and ultrasounds, and it's a wonderful, wonderful ministry we support. Also, last week went to the Heartland American Israeli Initiative, and one of our members had gone to Israel right after the few months after the October 7th attack, and gave us a heartbreaking account of visiting there and what was going on in person. And then today is Tuesday. Last Friday had a very exciting thing. I had seen on TV about in Tampa a fire station that had a fire dog. So I thought, boy, that seems like a good idea. So we kind of asked around and prayed about it, and God provided an amazing dog, Ember, shepherd poodle mix, and we had the reveal last Friday with Ember at the firehouse and a cake, and Chick-fil-A did a great job of feeding us, and it was just a lot of fun. So Ember's going to be she's a fire dog intern, and so she's going to be hopefully an ambassador and a morale booster, and a wonderful addition to our great first responders. And that's been a lot of fun. So just wanted to say there's a lot of good fun here in town to be had.
All right. Thank you. Josh? No report. Harrison?
Saturday went to a chamber event for dueling pianos. Just want to shout out to Tennille and everybody at the chamber putting on a great event. A lot of fun. I think that was the second annual event that they had, so looking forward to next year. report other than that.
All right, thank you. So I bought my daughter her first set of golf clubs, 5 years old, and I took her out to the golf course this past weekend and spent 3 hours out there with her.
She beat you.
And she only hit me once. I'll take that. But it looks great. They just planted a whole bunch of plants out there. Best I've ever seen it look. So great job, Fred. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'm going to pull item 8C. So if you could just include that. I think that warrants a little bit of conversation. So any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Well, I just have a question. Why are we pulling that? We need to look at it again, or?
It just, I believe it warrants a little conversation.
Okay. So what will we do? Have like a workshop on it, or?
No, we're going to address it next.
Oh, okay.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 8C.
Second.
Full board?
Avery,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bishop.
Yes. All right. Item 8C, Bobby. Sorry, Carlos isn't here to. So my question, a couple of questions. Number one is, what is the initial financial input and what will it be for? And the reason I'm asking that is it is for the ALS equipment and we buy it and we aren't able to fully use it to our ability for however long, do we lose time on that equipment?
So I'll address that first, and then you're gonna have to re-ask the question
Okay,
because my
got
memory's
it.
short. Bobby Border for the record. So to answer your question about the ALS monitor, so we can buy, and that is included in that price, we can buy 1 year included and then 7 more years of a service plan that goes with it, which is a warranty. If it does get damaged, they provide us with a loaner and all the maintenance and service work that has to be performed. They'll sell us that for 8 years. That doesn't mean that the monitor's no good after 8 years. They'll guarantee it for that long.
Okay.
So, yes, it will be aging some, but we'll be starting to use it immediately. But there's no set life expectancy. It can last, it'll last till it doesn't work anymore, till
Okay.
it no longer passes their testing.
All right. That answers my question.
Okay.
What is can you give me a number on the initial that we're going to have to move to
So-
this fiscal year?
I can go through it, and so the incentive pay will initially be for 2 paramedics. That will start basically as soon as the county and the state, as soon as we are granted our COPCN and then our license through the health department. We will have 2 ready to go, and we'll have a 3rd around July or August.
Mm-hmm.
So then we'll have 3 and they're all on different shifts currently. So that'll work out.
So you're going to have another one in 8 months ish.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the training and education, we have 4 people scheduled to start in January. So the incentive pay and training and education definitely will have to be upfront. I was just gonna come to you later or figure out the training money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
We didn't budget for it, but we have 4 guys slated to start in January. Obviously, the monitor, the medical supplies, and some of these numbers, like I told you guys last meeting, I'd rather scare you up front than
Mm-hmm.
have you mad at me towards the end when I have to come and ask for more money again. I don't think we're gonna spend that much on medical supplies. Truthfully, I don't really think we're ever gonna spend that much on medical supplies. But probably shouldn't say that.
All right.
So, one last thing, the medical director services, the ESO medical reporting system, and the cardiac monitor all have to be at least ordered which what they want is a PO created for it. This is the county, before they will approve that COPCN.
No, you answered my question. My concern was if we buy the ALS equipment and it has a lifespan of 10 years and we don't use it for the first year, what happens? So you've addressed that. That's
Stay
it?
in the box and not get damaged, so
Got
doesn't
it.
matter.
Okay.
And we're just buying one right now,
Correct.
and you'll get the second one once you have enough people to actually use it, right?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Or am I the only one? That's a hard nose up here.
No, I appreciate you asking the question.
All right,
so that
thanks.
everybody
I make a motion to approve, one, the implementation of the non-transport ALS program in fiscal year 2024, 2025, and resolution number 2024-38, authorizing budget amendment number 13 as presented.
Second.
And I second. Whoops.
Call the board, please.
Clark, I'm sorry, Avery,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bishop.
Yes. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
All right, up next is item 10A. We have Chairman of the Airport Authority Board, Mr. Pete McDivitt. He's going to come up and tell us a little bit about what they have going on.
Okay, so good evening, council members and staff. Our presenter this evening is going to be Andrew Bennett, Deputy Director of the Sebring Airport Authority. Andrew, originally from Calhoun, Georgia, became interested in aviation at the age 15. He obtained his private pilot's license at the age of 18. He worked his way through college at the Tom B. David Airport in his hometown. Prior to joining the Sebring Airport Authority and following a 3-year stint in public accounting, he and his wife relocated to Collier County, Florida in July of 2016 to serve as operations manager with the Collier County Airport Authority. In January 2021, he was promoted to the position of executive manager responsible for administering fixed base operations services, airport operations, capital improvement planning, capital improvement project management, and economic development at the Marco Island Executive Airport, Immokalee Regional Airport, and Everglades Airport. Please welcome Andrew Bennett.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to come out tonight and present to you what we believe is a very exciting new initiative that's going on in the aviation industry. And really, before we jump into the presentation a little bit, just wanted to give a little bit of a preface to this presentation. And the intent of the presentation is to bring you aware really of what the industry is doing, changes within the industry, how those changes impact airports as a whole, and more specifically, general aviation airports like the Sebring Regional Airport. And also what the impacts will be to normal residents, everyday residents. It's oftentimes you don't really understand what's going on in the aviation industry unless you're a part of it on a daily basis. Aside from visiting your local commercial airport for a flight, that's about the extent of it. But what we believe will be an emergence of new technologies will certainly revolutionize your interaction with aviation as a whole for the years to come. And that is what we're going to present on tonight. So what is that initiative? What is this new technology that we're discussing? Well, the catchphrase or the general term that we use is called advanced air mobility. What does that really mean? Well, advanced air mobility is the concept of taking new types of aircraft, new technologies, and bridging them into an environment that's accessible to the average everyday person. What aircraft are we talking about? What is this type of a platform? Well, luckily for us, and luckily for the FAA, who just recently approved the flight characteristics and training parameters for these aircraft, they're called power lift aircraft. Power lift aircraft, essentially what they are, is a platform that takes the efficiencies of helicopters and the efficiencies of aircraft and combining them into one aircraft unit. And really, to give you kind of a context of how interesting this is, This is the first complete new category of aircraft to be issued by the FAA in 80 years. That is substantial. And this just recently occurred 3 weeks ago. So these types of aircraft are really revolutionary in a lot of ways. So when you think about it, today, if I go to Miami Airport or I fly into Tampa, Orlando, and I don't have transportation arranged and I need to go somewhere, I'm going to take out my phone, I'm going to pick up the Uber app, and I'm going to get an Uber to go somewhere. That's a revolutionary technology, revolutionary business concept. The idea behind advanced air mobility is very similar. I want to go somewhere efficiently. I want to transport myself, my family. I want to go to the Orlando airport to catch a flight, but I don't want to drive there, or I want to be able to transport goods and services from one location to another seamlessly and more affordably. How do I do that? Well, I embrace this technology. I take these aircraft, I adopt these aircraft, and I use them for various purposes for urban advanced air mobility and connectivity. That is what advanced air mobility ultimately is trying to achieve. Next slide, please. So, advanced air mobility technologies promise to transform how people and cargo are moved in the United States. And it is estimated that this industry alone will reach $115 billion annually by 2035 and employ more than 280,000 high-paying jobs. So who's investing in this industry? Well, here's a few companies to name some. So Toyota has actually coordinated with Joby, one of the actual manufacturers of these types of aircraft. They've invested more than $400 million to essentially create the true Uber in the sky. So Joby Aircraft is a manufacturing company. You may be familiar with them. You may have seen some of their aircraft in different advertisements, but they are ultimately the ones that are truly pursuing the air taxi concept. We want to have a platform truly dedicated to transporting people, whether that's city to city limits or within city limits, within metropolitan limits, to actually regional connectivity. That is their primary focus, and Toyota is behind them, $400 million. The airlines have also looked at this technology and said, well, regional carriers, they've historically been successful for the most part, but where do you see regional commercial airline service in the future? We want to provide door-to-door service. We want to truly be able to have a customer interaction from the moment we pick you up to the moment to your final destination. Oftentimes that door-to-door service isn't available. It's not available to us in Sebring right now. So if you want to go somewhere, you're going to have to drive to the Tampa airport, Orlando airport, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Sarasota, Fort Myers, etc. Well, in the future, what if there was an opportunity for you to get on a platform, get on an aircraft at the Sebring Regional Airport and fly to those larger airports to another connecting flight? That is the model that United has looked at. Archer Aviation is a manufacturing company that they have worked with almost to the tune of $1 billion in pre-orders for their aircraft to provide that service, truly have that on-demand service. You can engage with your customer from the moment that to the closest airport that they live in and escort them and transport them all the way to their final destination. Boeing is another company that's invested heavily within these aircraft with a focus mainly on cargo operations and whisk aircraft. Their platform is dedicated almost exclusively for that purpose, transporting cargo efficiently. Think about it. How often do you see Amazon trucks driving through? All the time. I see them every day. And not just because my wife is buying something. But no, it's more
Because
and more
my wife is buying something.
Exactly. But that's the intent, is how do we efficiently more connect people, goods, and services, and do it in a more affordable way that the average person can actually leverage. Next slide. So to kind of give you an idea on some recent updates, some other technology and industries that is also, or other states that for that matter, that have looked at investing in this technology. So federal grants. So for one in particular, the military does a lot of testing in the state of Florida. So specifically at Eglin Air Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base, they are testing these platforms out. And I think that kind of goes to show you that this is not just going to be leveraged for a civilian purpose. There's certainly a Department of Defense connection to this development technology. And one of the actual aircraft that is being tested right now is Beta. And that is the aircraft that the airport authority has selected as kind of our design aircraft. So when we start planning for this type of technology, the infrastructure at the airport, which we'll get into a little bit later in the slide, we have to select an aircraft that we think would be the platform that would most frequently use our infrastructure. And that was the selected aircraft for us. And Beta is actually testing right now in the state and growing their charging network throughout the state, where many of these aircraft are going to be powered fully electric. Many of them will be powered through hybrid technologies, and many of them will be powered through an assortment of different combustible platforms, but mostly electrical bases is sustainable green solutions is kind of the initiative that they're focused on. So battery powered, hydro powered technology, that's the focus. And really that's what allows for that price point to be at a point where the average person can truly embrace it. Georgia is one of the states that actually just recently built a manufacturing facility in Covington, to be specific, for Archer Aviation. So Archer Aviation being one of the platforms that was selected by United Airlines. Well, they're building a 350,000 square foot manufacturing facility in that location. And Joby is manufacturing their platform up in Ohio as well. So a lot of investment, a lot of embracement by different states. But from an actual operational perspective, you'll learn shortly that Florida, in many ways, is kind of leading the initiative for this technology testing to be actually deployed in our state. And you'll see why that's the case shortly. So next slide, please. So acronyms. In aviation, we love acronyms. And so I'm going to kind of go through a few of them with you so that just kind of get an understanding of a little bit of the vernacular behind the actual initiative here. So eVTOLs, so like I mentioned a second ago, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. That's the most common phrase that you hear. eVTOLs are coming to the market. Well, those are just one example. The other example is eCTOLs, which is really what the Beta aircraft is right now that's actually testing within the military and Eglin Air Force Base. And that's electric conventional takeoff and landing aircraft. Vertiports, which you'll see later, is the new model of how do we get a designated landing and takeoff location and charging area for these aircraft. Then that's going to be a designated vertiport location. Hybrid systems, like I said, hybrid battery-powered systems are the primary initiatives driving this initiative. And certainly it's going to be an investment, not just in infrastructure, but how do we enhance our charging infrastructure, not just at the airport, but across the state to be able to support these types of platforms. Next slide. For utilization, what can we use these types of aircraft for? Well, as I said, military is one that's already being tested today. Cargo, passenger travel, medical travel, humanitarian missions, very assortment of different operational platforms that you can use these aircraft for. So there's the service industry, the service sector that can be provided by these types of aircraft is really quite diverse. And certainly from our perspective at the airport, we certainly hope to leverage passenger and cargo operations exclusively, and you'll see why momentarily. So use cases. So why is the airport really pursuing this? What's the competitive advantage for the Sebring Regional Airport to be able to harness the technology and make it sustainable for our region, for our community? Well, here's a great example of that. So these aircraft, many of them are electrically powered, hybrid powered, limited range. That's the negative downside to it. You have to be able to recharge. You have to be able to refuel more often. Well, look at where Sebring's positioned on your map. And look at the airports that surround Sebring. It's quite impressive to see. Within 71 nautical miles from the Sebring Regional Airport, you have 8 commercial service airports. 2 of those airports are large hub airports. There's 4 large hub airports in the state. Tampa, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. And we're within 3 hours of Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Driving distance. So this really creates a great picture, I think, to show you how the airport can leverage this technology, prepare for develop our own infrastructure to support them and support the community. Being able to talk to a new resident that's maybe looking at coming to Highlands County, and they say, you know, I'm coming from a coastal community. I'm used to having certain amenities. I'd like to be able to retain some of those amenities, but also I'm looking for a more slower pace of life. I'm looking for more space. I'm looking to be more inland. I want to get away from the coastal communities that are very much congested, but I want to be able to access those amenities. Here's a great way to do that. Someone wants to relocate to Highlands County. I travel often. You know, I need access to an airport that I can get in and out of easily. Well, here's an option for you. We can support that desire. We can support that need out of the Sebring Airport. Next slide. So looking at the previous map on the previous slide, this is the significant importance of that. You have multiple connection points. Once those surrounding airports develop their infrastructure to support advanced air mobility, look at all the connection points that exist because of that. It's really quite an impressive outline of the possibilities when you break it down mathematically about what can exist once this industry is fully adopted, fully embraced. The technology or the infrastructure exists to support it. There's multiple connection points between Sebring and other locations throughout the state. We are centrally located, and that is by far our sustainable competitive advantage to be able to harness this technology and embrace it, support it, and grow it. Next slide, please. Infrastructure, I've mentioned that quite a bit. What type of infrastructure do we need? Well, charging infrastructure. Electrical powered aircraft have to be recharge frequently, and that's the key. That's the component, the catalyst that really makes this a sustainable initiative for the airports. You've got to be able to have that actual charging infrastructure, the actual platforms used to charge these aircraft adopted, embraced, and installed in your location in order to be able to support the aircraft, bring the aircraft to your facility, have the aircraft be able to pick up passengers or drop off passengers, recharge, and go to their next destination. It's critical. And certainly a network is something that we're working towards, and very much in the beginning stages of doing so. But that is the initial step, getting the infrastructure in place, starting the planning, start asking questions, discussing operational capacities and limitations with the operators. Next slide, please. Florida economic impact and FAA compliance. Well, luckily for us, as I just mentioned, the FAA just reached a large milestone by establishing a whole new category of aircraft for the first time in 80 years. That recently was done. And that is the first step in getting these aircraft to a commercial scale. Establishing what are the parameters for training pilots? What are the parameters of flight characteristics, safety parameters? What do we have to consider? That's a huge step forward, and certainly a boost to the industry, who's been working towards this for a number of years now, but it's really starting to come to a head. But this is just an outline of all of the steps that we have to go through to be able to get to the next stage. Designing, construction, pilot training, air traffic control. How do the aircraft integrate within the existing airspace system? How does the state allow the aircraft to integrate within the system, etc.? Maintenance, development, manufacturing. All of that comes into play. And Sebring, the Sebring Regional Airport specifically, is well positioned to harness almost every component of this requirement for compliance purposes. Next slide. So, recently the airport participated in a conference in Miami. It's the Florida Airports Council conference. We attend every year, and typically they have a representative from FDOT there to speak on various topics. Luckily for us this year, Secretary Jared Perdue was one of the speakers, and this was a topic of conversation during that conference. And I've included some of his quotes from that meeting to kind of articulate FDOT's position within this particular industry segment. And really, it's an area that is fully embraced. And to have that support at a state level, to have that support at a local level, it really primes us for a great position for when these aircraft actually become operational. I mean, the support system's there, the funding will be there, the planning support is already there. These conversations are already ongoing with these operators, and really to have a state entity fully embrace that, even though it's very much in its inception, is really a great benefit and a true testament to we want to be the first in the United States to be able to fully say we have adopted advanced air mobility in our state, and that's a great representation of our leadership at that level. So what does the actual planning that we've done look like for the airport? Here you go. So this is what's called an airport layout plan update. So every public use airport that receives federal and state funding has to have an FAA-approved airport layout plan. We have a plan that's been approved since 2020. Well, in 2020, advanced air mobility really wasn't at the stages it's at today. So we did not have this particular exhibit outlined within our ALP at that time. So if we want to get federal funding or state funding to do segments of a project, to do design work, to do construction work, it has to be an approved project. And this is that first step. This is that planning effort that we have taken at the airport to ensure that we are positioned and can compete for funding when it's available to us. And what you were looking at on your screen and on your paper is the vertiport layout for the Sebring Regional Airport. It's immediately adjacent to our existing terminal facility, so we're leveraging somewhat of an economy of scale to be able to actually cycle passengers in and out of the actual terminal facility for processing into the vertiport. The area to the south of the terminal building, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, those particular circles that you see are all charging pads. So it's a pad, it's a location that these types of aircraft will taxi into, shut down, and recharge, offload and load passengers, etc. The square area just to the left of that is called the FADO area, final approach and takeoff area. That is where the aircraft will arrive and depart from. And that is kind of reminiscent to a heliport, right? Or a helipad. I'm sure most of you may have seen a helipad at some point. And it's very similar to that, since the aircraft itself will have the capability to vertically take off and land. And so that will be kind of a dedicated landing and takeoff location for the aircraft, so it doesn't disrupt our conventional aircraft flows. So you'll see that that's why we strategically placed it the way that we did, so that we can actually have aircraft arriving and departing in conjunction with our existing conventional aircraft traffic. So this is currently with the FAA. So we submitted this a couple months ago to the FAA for their review and ultimately approval. And really, it's to our knowledge, we're one of the first airports in the state to actually do this. There's not a lot of finalized documentation from the FAA as far as design standards and criteria go. That is still being determined by them and by their team. But we took the steps anyway, based on the information that we have available to us, to start that planning process. So plans are great, but planning is indispensable. And we felt like this was the right step forward to, let's get this in front of them. This is what we want. This is what we believe will support our operations for many years to come. Let's see what their feedback is. Let's get that conversation started. This is where we're at today. And actually, we just received word that this has been pushed up to the review team out of DC for their input and comments. And so that's a great sign that shows the FAA they've already provided a number of comments to us, but I think this effort here, and by them taking it up to that level, really shows that they are interested in supporting this as well. So that's the initiatives we're taking. That's kind of the new and emerging technology that we feel will certainly benefit the community, benefit every resident of Highlands County, and really connect Highlands County to the rest of the state in a lot of ways, more efficiently. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do realize I threw a lot of information at you, so please let me know if you have any comments or questions.
In your opinion, and not for Sebring, just in the world, what do you think the timeline is for that to be up and running?
Well, I would say at a commercial scale, I would say you would see the aircraft at that level probably in late 2026, early 2027 timeframes. And it's going to be, I think, a little on the limited side. And as the market becomes more saturated, you will see more and more of these aircraft operating in and out of existing airports. And that will segue in to eventually the need to have isolated vertiports in different portions of the community, not just the airport.
And what area of the country do you see it starting in?
I would say Florida will probably be one of the first. Florida, California, New York.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is just wonderful. And I'm not a airplane person really, other than the really big ones. But it certainly would be nice to have a service like that to transport us easily to the big airports. And this is just somebody who doesn't know anything about this, but you're going to have a pilot on these verticals and take off.
Yes, you'll have a pilot. It'll be one pilot, and typically they'll be focused on passenger transportation. I do think you will see more autonomous cargo operations. I do think there's
That means without a
heavy
pilot.
focus. That means without a pilot. I think you'll see that with Wisk kind of being at the forefront of the cargo focus and that technology. It will be autonomous.
You know, the vertical takeoff, that seems to be like it'd be easier to do that than a regular takeoff where you go down the runway and all, correct or no?
I
Is it
wouldn't
a
say-
different a different craft for the vertical. Yeah.
It's a brand new type of aircraft, actually a new category of aircraft called power lift, which essentially harnesses the vertical and landing component of helicopters while maximizing the efficiencies of conventional aircraft. So generally speaking, helicopters are exceptionally maneuverable. They're incredible machines, but they do have drawbacks. And for some of those for some of the aircraft, the drawback is they're not real fast. They're not their forward speed is fairly slow compared to aircraft, therefore a conventional aircraft. And really the premise is, how do we get the benefits of the helicopter, the vertical takeoff and landing component of that? How do we incorporate that into a platform that is efficient in cruise flight, like an aircraft would be, like an airliner would be? How do we maximize those efficiencies into one new category of aircraft? And this is that technology. And certainly, I would say, if you've ever flown a drone, the drone industry has certainly been a huge contributor to the advanced air mobility industry. I'm sure most of us have played with a drone at some point, I think, or seen one fly. Well, that technology 10 years ago was really very much in its inception. Most folks didn't quite realize how the drone technology would be leveraged, and 10 years later, it's incorporated in almost every facet of service and industry levels that you see. And in fact, you're going to start seeing drone delivery services. So we've already seen it in certain locations across the nation. But that technology has also helped kind of guide the engineering behind these types of aircraft. If you've ever flown a drone, they're quite efficient, quite interesting, very maneuverable, and they harness new technology, new outlines, new designs. And certainly these aircraft have looked at that technology and said, maybe we can incorporate some of that into our actual manned vehicles.
I know I mentioned to you that, excuse me, I saw on the Tampa news station that they were already putting this in place also. So it's pretty amazing that little old Sebring is right on the cusp of all this innovative movement too.
Well, we are exceptionally well positioned.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, and I feel like that is indeed a competitive advantage. You look at a lot of the coastal airports that I've even referenced in my presentation today, there's a lot of congestion at those airports. Certainly, they do have space to develop some level of advanced air mobility by all means. But at some point, there's going to be a lot of these aircraft operating in the sky, and these aircraft are not small. They're quite robust. In fact, the Beta aircraft that we've chosen for our design aircraft has a 50-foot wingspan, which is larger than most of your single engine aircraft. And so there's a lot there, and you have an airport like Sebring that has tremendous resources already in existence that we can leverage today to support operations. It's just a competitive opportunity for us to be able to leverage that. We are well positioned to do so, and it's in the community's benefit, and certainly in the airport's benefit, to be able to prepare ourselves, prepare our infrastructure for when this time comes. And we feel like this is the way to do it. This is the focus to have at this moment, and certainly will benefit every resident of the community.
Any other questions?
I've got one quick one. This might be a hard one to answer. Do you have any idea what kind of cost it, will it be affordable for an average person, or kind of a exclusive thing? What are your thoughts?
There's some theories that have been thrown out, and I don't want to get into hypotheticals, but I would say it's going to be like any other industry. I think as these aircraft come into the commercial market, I think the cost will probably be higher than what the average person would want to spend. But as the market becomes more saturated, as competition increases, as demand increases, that cost will come down. And also as infrastructure becomes available. And that's the key component. If you can't go somewhere that you can receive service, recharging capabilities, then you can't service that sector. You're going to have to find an alternative means or an alternative platform that may be hybrid powered, that has the range to be able to operate out of that facility into another facility. So as the market will drive the price, as it does in most industries in general. But I think on its inception, I do think there'll be a period of time where the cost will be probably higher than the average person would want to spend. But as the market becomes more and more accustomed and developed with this technology, that price will probably go down.
I got another question. So you mentioned as the market gets saturated, will the terminal at Sebring be exclusive to one provider, or will it be open to
As of this
whatever?
moment, it would be open to many operators, just like
Okay.
we are today. And so we're not exclusive to any one charter company that comes into the airport. We support all charter companies that come in that actually qualify to come into the airport. But I mean, it would be a very similar component here.
Okay.
We would support as many operators that we could, as long as our infrastructure is compatible
Can support
with
it.
aircraft.
Anybody else?
Do you know how long that would be until like we reach capacity, depending on how long or how fast this grows? Do we have do we have a good infrastructure in place that this is going to take us to the next 10, 15, 20 years?
I'd say with this development that you saw on the PowerPoint and the existing infrastructure that we have today, we would be more than capable of supporting at least for the next 10 years. But like I said, once we move forward with this project, this development, we will be keeping an eye on alternative sites if necessary to grow the airport. And the airport has more than enough land availability to prepare an alternative site if we have to.
When you say alternative sites, so it sounds like airports might just get smaller and smaller based on new technology. So you're saying that there could just be a couple within Highlands County too that you're going to. So you don't have to go just to Sebring Airport.
You don't. So let's say, for example, in the future, there's a vertiport built in Avon Park or a vertiport built in Lake Placid, and whoever's using that service doesn't necessarily have to fly into the airport.
Okay.
So that's a possibility. But that is actually like one of the most interesting things about the industry is that it's going to actually incentivize or actually motivate that development to occur in locations where it's never been considered before. And that is something that I think that at a municipal level that should be considered, at least in the next couple of years, try to identify locations where a potential vertiport might exist for future growth and development of the industry itself.
Anybody else?
I think this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
Yeah.
see how this develops. Whatever we can do to
Absolutely.
support it.
Any questions from the public? Okay.
What kind of passenger capacity are you talking about?
It'll be between 4 to 6 passengers.
Very interesting.
And what was the time? How quickly would you get from Sebring to say Orlando or one of these?
It depends on the aircraft that's taking you there. So, I mean, each aircraft will have different performance specifications. Each aircraft will fly a little faster, a little slower. It just depends. I would say the average speed that you would hope to obtain from the aircraft would be around 140 miles per hour to maybe up to 160 miles per hour, depending on the type of platform. So I think that's a pretty quick flight. That's a pretty
It's a
quick
very
flight
quick
up
flight.
to Orlando from Sebring at that speed.
Because, now if you're flying out of Orlando, which we usually do, I mean, we figure in an extra 4 hours, because we have to drive to Orlando and then we drive and park our car somewhere and take a shuttle. That'd be worth the extra money to eliminate all that, the loss of time,
But-
So I just congratulate y'all. This is a great presentation.
The
Thank you.
industry is still in its early stages, and we're doing our part to plan with the information that we have available to us today, and certainly that will change over time as the aircraft become operational, commercialized in the industry. Things will change, and certainly the airport will adopt if it's necessary to change with it. And we look forward to the opportunity to come back and rebrief you as this new technology and this new development unfolds.
Would there be any interest in having a building facility for these aircraft here? or-
Absolutely.
That would be pretty
Building,
cool.
maintenance, we are fully embraced on the opportunity to support all initiatives related to this industry. Everything from operational support to economic development.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Pete, thank you guys. All right, next up is item 10B. Bob Bogus is gonna come up and tell us about a water main we need to be working on.
Probably throw rocks at me if I said I wanted a budget one of those next year.
We'll just take it out of the fund balance.
What I have this afternoon or this evening is we've had to make a decision to replace the water main that we've had a lot of problems with. More recently, we've had some problems on the October 25th and 26th. Whereas we went out, made a repair, and before we got that repair covered up, it broke again. It broke a total of 4 times on us going down the line. So It's very brittle. If you even look at it hard, it breaks, it seems. So made the tough decision to treat this as an emergency repair and get things started to get it replaced. We reached out to our underground contractor, which we have the continual service contract with, which is Excavation Point. They provided us with a cost estimate to do the directional bore at $84,582. Typically, the city provides the materials, which includes the pipe. Pipe we're replacing it with is HDPE, which is pipe that usually lasts over 100 years. So, barring anybody getting into it any sort of way, we should not have any more problems with this section of pipe. The length that I failed to put this in there, but it's approximately 1,100 feet, linear feet. It's the distance. It is in a very tough easement. When this line was originally put in, there wasn't much out there, but the easement's in the back property line, which feeds both sides. And as you can imagine, through the years of development, there's all kinds of stuff that's in that easement now. So the only practical way that we saw to replace this line was to do a directional bore, which is what we're out there doing it now. Just wanted council to, it's a pretty fair price tag. The total with the directional bore and associated work and the materials is over $98,000. So it's no small price tag, but wanted you all to know that we're having to do it and the reasoning for it.
Cost of doing business. Okay.
Happy to
Anybody
answer
have
any questions.
anybody
I
have any
do, I
questions?
have questions.
Yes,
I imagine we have this kind of situation repeated quite a bit in our city infrastructure. What kind of shape do you think we are overall?
We typically don't, I mean, we have breaks, you know, we do have breaks, but we don't necessarily have this much trouble with a line like we did here. The only other line that comes to mind is the line that's on Highway 98 and on Haywood Taylor. That is an HDPE line, which you shouldn't have problems with, but we do. And I think the reason for that was this defective pipe. We have been trying to, well, it's a very complicated project out there. I think we're going to be able to do something with the Haywood Taylor section of that line here within the next 4 to 6 months. But the Highway 98 line is a little more of a problem because of DOT's plans to widen that road. And so we're not quite sure yet where that road's going to be. And obviously, we don't want to replace the line until we know for sure it's not going to be in the way of something. So we have taken steps to try to get some of that line out of service. We had an existing, I think it was an 8-inch line that was parallel. So we're feeding a lot of the people off that line, and we cut the 12-inch main, which is the one we're having trouble with. We just cut it loose. So we're not utilizing that section of line, which has helped us a lot with repairs. But typically we don't have, you repair it and then you don't have to worry with it again unless somebody drills, a directional bore drills through it, or somebody putting in a fence cuts in a line somehow. But things happen sometimes. But this was kind of a unique situation. And given the inconvenience that our customers experience through this, I looked at it as a ticking time bomb. We don't know when it's going to break again.
Yeah.
I hate talking about it because it brings some bad luck on us.
All right. Well, let's move on and entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda item summary as presented.
Second.
Poll the board, please.
Yes.
Rudolph,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bishop.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we have one item from the audience, Miss Nadine, is it Tedstone? You want to come up? Hello?
I'm speaking on behalf of the Sebring Recreation Club. I'm looking for disabled spots to be painted. We
Okay.
have one, and it's called the Senior Center, I believe, and we need at least 7 more. And that one spot has one blue line. I looked at yours, and they're very nice. we'd like something that looks a little like their Iowa. One spot that we made it.
Okay. Can we check and see if we are in compliance, at least? And
Additional ADA spaces.
yes.
You'd like to have a total of 7?
2 on the both ends and 2 in the center. There's enough room.
We'll look into it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Next up, Mr. Attorney.
Agenda item 12A is a proposed ordinance that would amend the city's charter regarding the position of city clerk. The city's charter provides that the city clerk is an elected officer and must be a resident of the city, meaning reside inside the city limits, and an elector of the city. It also provides that the city clerk is the city's tax collector, chief elections officer, and treasurer. The only way to amend a charter is to pass an ordinance and then have that ordinance approved by a majority of the electorate at a referendum at the next election. So council's direction from the last meeting, I have drafted a proposed ordinance that would allow for the city clerk to be an employee of the city as opposed to an elected official, and allow for the city council to establish the duties of the city clerk, and perhaps some but not all stay with the city clerk of what's being done now, others perhaps distributed to other employees of the city at council's preference moving forward. There's a number of different provisions in the charter that would have to change to accomplish that, and those are all set out in the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding it.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Comments? No? Any questions or comments from the public?
I'll make
Sammy,
a
do you have anything you'd like to add? No?
make a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance as presented and schedule second and final reading for December 3rd, 2024.
I'll second it.
Okay. Poll the board, please.
Hagberg,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Bishop.
Yes. Mr. Naylick?
Good evening, council. Just a project report, Westlake Jackson project. No real changes to that other than I have received easements, proposed easements, construction easements, and permanent easements from the city attorney's office, and we'll be reaching out to try to achieve and get those easements. Echo Park, no real change there. We're still waiting on the judicial process in Texas. I hear that there's a hearing this Friday, so hopefully we'll get some results from that. No change on the road swap at this point in time. The relocation of Public Works Utilities parcel. The owner is drafting some changes to the contract we submitted to him, and we'll be pushing those back to Attorney Swain. Mobile home park moratorium, we'll have that on an agenda in December for council's review and approval.
Okay.
No change on Lakeview Water Sports Agreement, haven't heard a word. And the last but not least, the workshop. We've settled in on a date with Fish and Wildlife of December 5th. Don't know yet whether we're going to have that at the Civic Center or here. I would think we could have it here. I don't think we're going to have so many people.
Is that going to be in a workshop
But
format?
it'll be workshop format, correct?
Okay.
4:30.
4:30 on the 5th, correct. Does that work for everybody's schedules?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
All right. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Miss Haley?
Second.
Pull the board, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you.